Good morning, mathematicians. Okay, we are going to try this new. I'm going to give the video for the notes and the practice, and then when you're ready to start working, I'll be there to support you as you work. Okay, so today we are going to be working on solving quadratics by factoring. So factoring is what we learned when we were working with our polynomials. So there are 4 steps here, and I will help you through all 4 steps. Okay, first of all, you need to set the quadratic equation equal to 0. So notice that right now this is not equal to 0. So that will be our first step, equal to 0. Our second step will be to factor the left side. Now the left side, what we're going to do is, I'll show you. We're going to flip it. Now remember, factoring is what we learned with polynomials. Number 3, set each factor equal to 0 and solve each factor for x. And then finally, write your answer using the curly braces. Okay, so 4 steps. Make sure that you follow them. Have this open so you can just kind of work onto the side and check every step. Okay, so first of all, set the quadratic equation equal to 0. So I am going to make this equal to 0. So in other words, I'm going to get rid of the y and make it a 0. Now, when I'm factoring, I actually want it to be reversed. So notice that I'm just going to flip. It's kind of like a reflection. I'm just going to flip it right over. So I'm going to write x squared first. Then I'm going to write my plus 3x. Then I'm going to write my negative 10 equal to 0. So that is what it's called when you are setting your quadratic equation to 0. Now I'm going to factor the left side. Now factoring is one of those skills that if we need to practice separately, we can. I am going to use my diamond problem to factor. Notice that I have a positive 3 and a negative 10. So I need to figure out what are my factors that I can multiply so that they equal negative 10, but when I add them, they are a 3. Since one of these is negative, since my product is negative, one of my factors will be negative, and one of them will be positive. So what are some numbers that multiply to make 10, but when added make 3? So I do know that negative 5 and a positive 2 equal negative 10. But if I have negative 5 and positive 2 and get a positive 3, then that means I have this one wrong. So I'm kind of double checking. It needs to be a positive 5 and a negative 2. If you need more work on diamond problems, go ahead and practice in Delta Math. Okay, so now that I have my 2 factors, I'm going to write my parentheses. Now my x is divvied up, so I have an x on both sides. And then I'm going to have a positive 5 and a negative 2. Okay. Now, that is still equal to 0. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to separate those. I'm going to put x plus 5 equals 0. And then I'm going to put x minus 2 equals 0. Now, I just have to solve for x. Okay, so remember, I just set each factor equal to 0. So I took x plus 5, made it equal to 0. And I took x minus 2, and I made it equal to 0. Now I have to solve for each factor for x. So if I have x plus 5 equals 0, then I'm just going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 5. On this side, since I have x minus 2, I'm going to add 2. Add 2, and I get x equals 2. So finally, I'm going to write my answer in curly braces. Okay, so those curly braces, I've got a negative 5 and a positive 2. And that is solving quadratics by factoring. Let's go ahead and do one more here. Okay, notice that just in the beginning, they've already taken care of 1 and 2 for you. Okay, actually, we're factoring the left side, so we're going to do that part. Now, I'm noticing here that I have a positive and a positive. That tells me that when I factor, I'm going to have x plus something and x plus something because they're both positive. So I'm going to make my diamond problem. Sometimes I have to pause and think, and that's totally okay. Okay, so now I have two factors will add to 4, but when I multiply them, they're 3. So what are the factors that go into 3? Well, only 1 times 3, right? Well, 1 times 3 is 3, but 1 plus 3 is 4. So my factors are 1 and 3. Okay, so x plus 1 and x plus 3. Now I'm going to set them both to 0. So x plus 1. Oops, I need a better eraser. I'm noticing I don't have an eraser. Okay, so x plus 1 equals 0, and then over here x plus 3 equals 0. So I have set each factor to 0. Now I'm going to solve for each factor for x. Since that's a positive 1, I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides, and x equals negative 1. Here I have a positive 3, so I'm going to subtract 3. X equals negative 3. So in my curly braces, I've got a negative 1 and a negative 3 as my roots. Okay, I think we have time. I'll do one more. Notice it's already set to 0 for me, so now I'm going to factor the left side. To factor the left side, I'm going to start with my diamond problem. I'm going to look for numbers that multiply to 24 but add up to 11. So if you need to, over on the side, go ahead and make your factors. I've got 1 times 24, I've got 2 times 12, I've got 3 times 8, and I've got 4 times 6. I'm looking for which one of these, when added together, equals 11. And I see it right there. So 3 and 8 are my factors. So now I'm going to go ahead and separate into my brackets. I have x, remember there's 2 of them, so I give 1 to each. Then I have a factor of a positive 3 and a factor of a positive 8. Okay, I'm going to set them both to 0. X plus 3 equals 0 and x plus 8 equals 0. And just from my patterns below, I notice that when I move them over, x is negative 3. And this one I subtract 8, so x is negative 8. So my solutions are negative 3 and negative 8. Okay, go ahead and pause and practice a few on your own.